Since 1975, the global prevalence of obesity has tripled. Over 650 million adults are classified as obese, representing a systemic shift in human energy homeostasis. This minimalist chart reflects U.S. data from 2017 to 2018. The national baseline shows 42.4% of adults living with obesity. When separated by ethnicity, the prevalence in non-Hispanic Black populations approaches nearly 50%. The clinical threshold for this diagnosis relies on the World Health Organization's body mass index cutoff of 30 kilograms per square meter. But BMI is simply a blunt instrument. Relying solely on a height-to-weight ratio overestimates fat in muscular individuals and severely masks metabolic danger in Asian populations, who suffer adverse health outcomes at significantly lower BMI values. To accurately predict metabolic danger, clinical diagnosis requires measuring localized fat distribution rather than total body mass. The waist-to-hip ratio is a far superior predictor of adverse outcomes. Subcutaneous, or gynoid fat, stored around the hips and thighs, is relatively benign. The metabolic danger lies entirely in visceral, or android fat, stored deep within the central abdominal cavity. Ratios exceeding 0.9 in women and 1.0 in men indicate high risk. Visceral fat drives cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Yet the biological instructions to continuously accumulate this dangerous tissue originate entirely within the brain. The human body actively defends its fat stores. Energy homeostasis is maintained by a tightly regulated physiological set point managed by the hypothalamus. To monitor long-term energy reserves, the brain relies on leptin. Adipocytes constantly secrete this hormone to communicate the exact volume of lipid stores directly to the hypothalamus. Evolutionary pressure created a severe asymmetry in this system. When leptin levels drop during weight loss, the brain interprets it as starvation. It reacts aggressively, triggering a powerful, irrepressible hunger drive to force the replenishment of those stores. Conversely, the brain has a remarkably weak response to rising leptin. Accumulating more fat does not trigger an equal and opposite satiety signal. The body enters a state of leptin resistance, ignoring the hormone's instructions to stop eating. A secondary, acute control system operates alongside this chronic baseline. Enteroendocrine cells in the gut release hormones like GLP-1, GIP, and CCK immediately following a meal. These acute signals bypass the hypothalamus directly, targeting the brainstem to induce a temporary, short-lived sensation of post-meal satiety. When an individual attempts a severe caloric deficit, falling leptin levels drop faster than the physical disappearance of fat. This mismatch overrides the temporary satiety from gut hormones, triggering an unbeatable biological survival mechanism. Weight regain is the physiological result of this defense system. This schematic illustrates hypothalamic appetite control. Leptin enters, executing a dual action, stimulating POMC neurons while actively inhibiting hunger-driving NPY-AGRP neurons. POMC is cleaved by PCSK1 into alpha-MSH, which binds to the MC4R receptor, decreasing food intake. Conversely, disinhibited AGRP blocks MC4R, forcing high hunger. This precise sequence from POMC to PCSK1 to alpha-MSH and finally to MC4R forms the central axis of energy balance. A physical defect anywhere along this wiring diagram disables the terminal switch, guaranteeing extreme uncontrollable hyperphagia. Up to 20% of children presenting with severe obesity carry highly penetrant genetic mutations that physically break this exact pathway. In congenital leptin deficiency, lacking the leptin gene leaves the NPY-AGRP node uninhibited, causing insatiable hyperphagia from infancy, treatable only with recombinant leptin. Moving downstream, a POMC gene defect leaves the leptin signal intact, but fails internally because the crucial alpha-MSH peptide is never created. POMC deficiency presents with severe obesity, ACTH deficiency, and distinctly red hair, caused by missing MSH peptides failing to activate skin pigmentation receptors. Further down, MC4R mutations are the most common monogenic obesity cause. The upstream processing is perfect, but the terminal switch itself is broken.
patients with MC4R mutations exhibit severe hyperphagia, hyperinsulinemia, and markedly increased linear growth and lean mass from early childhood. Severe early-onset obesity is frequently a diagnosable single-gene neurological defect. Identifying these lesions dictates a shift in clinical management, replacing behavioral counseling with targeted genetic testing. Once the brain enforces the continuous storage of energy, the resulting systemic disease originates at the cellular level. This diagram illustrates healthy adipocytes storing pure triglycerides safely. As caloric intake persists, fat cells undergo hypertrophy. Reaching their strict maximum capacity, they vibrate under tension. Excess nutrients are dangerously redirected, spilling into hepatic tissue and skeletal muscle as ectopic fat. This mechanical failure and subsequent ectopic fat redistribution, coupled with macrophage infiltration into exhausted adipose tissue, forces cellular dysfunction and drives severe systemic insulin resistance. Ectopic fat in the liver and muscle provides the direct physiological link to the most common obesity complications: type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and cardiovascular disease. The consequences extend to endocrine failures. In women, insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia aggressively drive ovarian androgen production, resulting in polycystic ovary syndrome. Adipose tissue is designed to protect the body from excess energy. Metabolic complications emerge strictly when that safe storage capacity is exhausted, and ectopic fat poisons surrounding organs. Effective clinical management requires pharmacological interventions capable of bypassing these deep-seated genetic lesions and acquired resistant states. Administering recombinant leptin resolves congenital deficiency, but it offers zero benefit for the general obese population. Acquired leptin resistance renders adding more of the hormone biologically useless. Returning to the hypothalamic schematic, we can observe the mechanism of setmelanotide, a highly targeted MC4R agonist. Acting as a synthetic bypass, setmelanotide skips the defective POMC or PCSK1 nodes entirely, docking directly into the terminal MC4R receptor to instantly reignite the satiety wave. Broad-spectrum pharmaceutical treatments rely on GLP-1 and dual GIP agonists, such as semaglutide and tirzepatide. Rather than attempting to repair chronic leptin resistance, these drugs operate on the acute system. They flood the brainstem by mimicking massive post-meal enteroendocrine signals, artificially enforcing satiety and slowing gastric emptying. Modern food environments are saturated with energy-dense, highly palatable, and readily available calories. The individuals who remain normal weight under these conditions frequently do so due to a robust genetic advantage in their hypothalamic pathways. Obesity is a chronic, neuroendocrine-driven disease of ectopic fat distribution. Treating it successfully demands precise physiological interventions, recognizing that molecular defects in energy homeostasis cannot be corrected by behavioral willpower alone.